As you can probably imagine, there was a lot of skepticism in the 1950s with the flying saucer craze as well, kind of like it is today. But the difference is there wasn't that much scientific inquiry into UFOs or flying saucers in the 50s like there is today. A lot of times it was skepticism that people would just kind of think you were just a kook or a goof if you claim to see a flying saucer. But with the Trents and the McMinnville case, it was kind of hard for people to shed a bad light on them because they seem so honest and forthcoming with it. But of course, there were the people out there that said that they created this with a string or just flew a hubcap in the air and all of your standard debunking tools. But it wasn't until about 20 years later that there was some earnest scientific investigation about the Trent sighting. And yeah, well, let's take a look.
It's something unearthly.
Something unearthly is a good way to describe this unidentified flying object that was photographed by Mr. Paul Trent when he and another witness saw it fly across his farm. These two pictures have been the subject of some of the most rigorous photographic analysis ever done on UFO photographs. One such analysis was published by Dr. Bruce Maccabee, an optical physicist involved in advanced laser research for the United States Navy.
Now, before we get to Bruce Maccabee, he is the sort of go-to when it comes to sort of investigating photographic evidence of UFOs. And you have to stop and think, in this modern age where everybody has a cell phone and they can just flip their camera on and video record everything. This was back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and even into the 90s. 90s, not quite so much, a little bit less or so in the 80s, but definitely in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, where people didn't readily have access to not only camera phones, but easy access to video cameras. Back then, you either had a Super 8 video camera that you had to be holding in your hand when you saw something, or specifically be out trying to capture something on a video camera. You weren't just carrying them around like we do with our cell phones now in case we happen to see something. And the same could be said for photographs. Like you heard Evelyn Trent say in the first video, that she had this sighting and she told her husband Paul to run in and grab his 35 millimeter camera, which he did, and was able to snap the two pictures. It would be a lot simpler here in 2026, but things were different in the 1950s.
He calculated that the object would have been about a mile away and approximately 30 feet in diameter.
My analysis of the complete case leads me to believe that the Trents are actually telling the truth. An unusual object did fly at some distance from their farm. It would have been quite large, and its shape is such that I don't believe it was made by mankind.
Additional support for the McMinnville photograph comes from this photograph of a strikingly similar object taken 4 years later and 6,000 miles away by a French military pilot.
Now, that's the interesting thing is more times than not in the 40s, 50s, and even the 60s and 70s to a smaller extent. A lot of the UFOs looked similar to what we're talking about today. And as we got into the 80s and 90s and now, they've sort of changed what they look like. You got more of the triangle shaped UFOs in the 80s and 90s. And now we're seeing stuff like the Tic Tacs and the videos that you saw at the beginning of this. But for the most part, in the 50s, most of them were saucer shaped or looked like this one here, the McMinnville picture.
The similarity is so pronounced that one might think that these photographs are of the same object or of two different objects manufactured at the same place.
And I'll shut that off now because that goes into another story that we'll talk about on another time. But here's the thing.